Hi, I'm Mark Rudin. Welcome back to Nomad Boatbuilding. Well, when I took on this little Qaumutiit project, I really thought this was going to be like a really fast 10, 15-minute video. Who knew I would have so much to say about Qaumutiit and Arctic culture and Arctic history and all that sort of stuff. Now, I want to remind you that I am not an authority on any of these things, so please do not take whatever I say as gospel, but I hope you will enjoy the show just the same. Without further ado, let's get back to work. Now, in that boot, let's see, how do these look? I wonder, I think I kind of want to make it a little leaner, a little more like what it might look like if it were being pulled by dog sled. I think that looks about right. So we want to chop them about there. Okay. I'll use this. I'm going to use this offcut as a stop. So what I'll do, in fact, I could even be cutting these right up on here. Maybe we'll do that. So I'll just put a drop of glue on that. Stick it on there. Okay. How many do I need? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 of them. Always make one extra. Okay, now when I go to lash these on, I need a little bit protruding. And we need to cut little lashing notches on there. So I'm going to need some way to mark that. So we'll do this. I'll mark them right here. Flip that over. I wonder if I can use that to my advantage. I'll bet I can. So let's try this. Yeah. Flip it. Do that, and I can tell you right now, if I don't do a little notch across the top, it's not going to look right. So do that too. Notch across it. It's going to look good, and then of course the very ends, give them a little bit of a whittle as well. Clean up that end grain. There we go. So I'm just going to keep doing that. I'll be here for a while, it looks like. That's okay. I'll put on some tunes. Kick back and relax, whittle away. I want to thank all my subscribers for their ongoing support, their comments, their shares, and good wishes. And I also want to thank all of my followers on Patreon whose monthly pledges support this channel. If you can help us on Patreon, I would really appreciate it. There are links in the corner or down in the description. Got a big stack of naput. I suppose I wonder if they're naputi. I'm not too sure about the plural for naput. Anyhow, we got our Qaumutiit here. To turn them into Qaumutiit, we need to put the crossbars or naput across here. So I'm thinking what I might do is just glue on the first couple, because trying to hold this and build at the same time can be tricky. I mean, of course, if you're building a real size thing, it's a different animal, but when you're building it at scale, it could be quite awkward trying to lash and assemble. So I've done a little bit of lashing here. And the kaliaratak, the little pieces that go on top of the runners here to extend the nose, I did some little tiny lashings. I opted for using some sinew for that, some real sinew. I think I might try lashing the whole thing with real sinew just for fun. We'll see. I'll try it on this first one, and if it's a huge pain in the butt, I might probably just switch to synthetic sinew for the rest. But anyhow, let's just start with a drop of glue. And ideally I want this good and square, so I'll just square this first one up. Oh, this is really, really hard to hang on to here. Maybe what I'll do is I'll do just like a singular lashing on the first ones, and then I'll worry about a running lashing for the rest. I don't know, this using sinew might be a huge pain. Of course, trying to peel off a piece that's consistent may or may not even be something I can do effectively. I'm sure there's a trick to it. That'll work. I've got a piece of beeswax here I'm just going to use to give it a coating to stiffen it up, which is an old sailmaker's trick. Oh, there we go. That just broke away. Hopefully this little piece is enough for this lashing. Let's see. Here we go. Now, as much as possible, I'd love to make these lashings authentic, you know. I'm not sure with what ease I can do that. Let me try. Normally I would go around a couple times, but this bit of sinew isn't really long enough for that. A little less neat than I would like to see, but I suppose it works. Now the question is, do I attach the other side? Do the same? Yeah, maybe I do the four corners. You know, as much as I would just like to lash the whole thing together so that it's very traditional, I don't think that's practical at this scale. I think I should probably just glue these guys all on and then come along and do my lashing, my running lashing. I think that makes a lot more sense, so I think I'll do that. Spacer. Funny, as simple as this little structure is, it's still surprisingly challenging to build it, you know? Go. All right, now to lash these in. I think, I don't know, I'll take one more stab at, let's see if this, yeah. No, you know what? Like trying to peel off a consistent strand of this sinew, such as required to lash this in, is just not going to work. So I'm actually going to cut this first one out because I'm not happy with it. Okay, splitting down the sinew, a little bit tricky sometimes. So what I like to do is, you can do it two ways. You get the split started, and I'm just trying to go in half. And you can grab the sinew like this and try working apart like that, or you can go this way. It's it doesn't always work all that well because it likes to break into other strands. Sometimes the best thing to do is you just pull it apart, and if it wants to break into different strands, let it, and then bring them back together when you got it figured out. It's because we don't know how these strands are oriented in there. Just because you split it at one end doesn't mean they don't crisscross over somewhere. So usually I'll just do what I can to sort of get it to split apart in any way. No, see, it wants to just lock up. Just wants to lock up like that. So okay, let's try from the other end. A lot of the time I'll just use like dental floss when I'm doing this stuff for models, but it doesn't work as nice because it's the nylon here is stretchy, and that really helps to get these knots to come together. So what I find a bit more productive sometimes is I just get it started, just try and break a few strands out. Here we go. Now it's starting to come apart. It's breaking into like quite a few different strands. For this reason, you don't want to peel off a strip longer than it really needs to be for the purposes of splitting down because it gets rather awkward. Okay, there we go. Another couple of them. So we'll just carefully grab all of those and we'll just hang them up somewhere. Some wax, needle, and away we go. So the sinew is called evalu, but because we're using it as a substitute for the lashing material is called napulio. And that would just be like a cut thong. All right, so I'm going to be using a running lashing. And there's a couple good reasons for using a running lashing. First of all, it actually uses less material than if you were to try and do these lashings in individual little pieces. It doesn't seem like it would be, but it is actually. It's more efficient in material, and it also allows the stress of the lashing to be balanced out along the whole length of the structure. And so if it's twisting and turning, no one lashing is taking all the strain. It's sort of sharing it, and the lashing material is able to sort of shift around a little bit. And if one spot is getting extra strain, it can pull some slack from the neighboring knots, if you will. So in that respect, it's theoretically stronger. Also, if you want to take this all apart and use the parts for something else, for instance, perhaps you really need a kayak. You want to turn your Qaumutiit into a kayak. You can take it apart and you can reuse that lashing material because you've left it long. So I am going to do the running lashing on the inside, I think, for no other reason than that is what it appears to be on my in the photographs that I have. Now, I could be wrong about them. It could be that I'm not seeing them very clearly. These are not big photographs I've got to work with. Not really showing those details, but it should work out fine. So it's the same pattern that I use when I'm doing kayaks. We go over one thing, under another thing. Let's see. First one is always a little bit. Got to do a few extra turns to get yourself on the right path. So, going over my crossbar, and in this case, the under portion is going through the hole. Should use the right term, shouldn't I? Over the naput, through the the Napuliarovic. That's what the lashing holes are called, Napuliarovic. And I know I am murdering those words. My apologies to you native Inuktitut speakers. I do my best. I don't have someone who speaks Inuktitut close at hand at the moment to correct me. But so over. I keep letting this little loop pop off and go flying. Under. There we go. And then we come through here. And that in turn comes over that guy. That locks it off. And then we're on and running to the next one. Good. It's actually really fast doing this too. Of course, this, the small scale, everything's fiddly, so less fast. I have to say I really enjoy making these little models like this. There's something incredibly satisfying about it. There's little things that as I'm working on this, because it's, you know, it's pretty low stress, it's easy to sit there thinking about some of the minutia that you don't necessarily think about. Like in this case, I'm thinking about the path of the cord, whether it's better to wrap it one direction or the other direction around these naput. So I'm coming over top of this guy through the hole, right? And now what I was thinking about is if I come back the same direction, this thread is now pulling into the grain that way. But if I go the other direction, it's crisscrossing over the grain, and both these lines crisscross inside that hole, and probably makes for a stronger result that is less likely to split that wood, if that makes any sense. I don't know that I've even thought about that before, because I don't use this running lashing in this exact context enough to really intellectualize that kind of thing. But now that I thunk it, hopefully I will keep it in mind for next time. I like to finish things off with a locking turn that wraps around the inside of the joint, and that just sort of locks off all the that last lashing. Allows you to do this knot with a lot more ease. And just some half hitches to finish it off. I'll do 3 of them, just like if I were building a real boat. 3 or 4. Okay, where'd my tiny scissors go? There we go. See that little nice little lashing detail in there? All right, let's do the other side. So this is polystyrene. It's easy to get, cheap, relatively cheap. About $12 or something for this quarter sheet. And if you're into model making, this is the sort of the plywood of model making almost. I used a lot of this stuff back in college when I was studying industrial design for all of our model making needs. Very easy to cut. It's nice and soft. Just use, all you gotta do is score it and it'll snap. I'm scoring both sides of this just to make it a little bit easier to cut. I'm using this really nice little marking gauge that one of my followers has sent me. It's made out of bog oak. This wood is somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 years old, which is pretty awesome to think about. Beautiful stuff. So we're going to use this to be the runners on our Qaumutiit, or the shoes if you want, or the slides, whatever you want to call them. So historically, once you would sometimes shoe your Qaumutiit with bone. Whale bone was apparently a popular item because it was porous. When you sprayed water on there to create the sort of slippery portion of the shoe, it was apparently a little bit, worked a bit better because of the porousness. Sometimes baleen was even used. Of course, antler might be used for your shoeing, your runners. Even ivory was used, but apparently ivory is quite brittle and doesn't make the best runners because of that. At certain times of the year, it was advantageous to switch from mud and sod as a shoeing material to even pond ice, freshwater pond ice. So in addition to just straight water, sometimes urine was used mixed with the water, or blood was used because it would stick a bit better. As you get into the warmer temperatures, the shoeing had a tendency to want to melt, of course, and so it was not uncommon to try and to hang cloths or skins over the side of the Qaumutiit in order to shade those runners, keep the sun from melting the shoeing. And contemporarily, high-density polyethylene is actually the preferred material. So I'm just using a bit of styrene plastic for mine to kind of represent that high-density polyethylene, because we're building a snowmobile era Qaumutiit here. High-density polyethylene is pretty amazing stuff, really. There was one elder that I was hanging out with named Gino Atak, and he had an old cedar canvas freighter canoe. I think it had been fiberglassed over at some point in its history, but he had high-density polyethylene runners all over it. Several of them across the bottom, including the keel, and then around the turn of the bilge. And so he could just drag this canoe up and over rocks like it was nothing. He'd just hook it up to his ATV and pulled it wherever he wanted to, just like it was a sled. I like it when models like this are a little bit wittily, not too refined. I think that gives them a little more character. Since I can't come up with a more ridiculous thing to do, I'm going to try and make tiny little muskox horn pegs to peg those runners on with. So you just pop down to your local muskox shop, pick up some horn. Now, figure out how I can split this stuff down and try and make some tiny little pegs. Let's see. Whew, tough stuff, man. I don't know why they make tools out of it. Okay. Cool. Using a bigger drill bit, but I'm kind of, I think I'm at my largest limit before I end up with something that's a 1/16 of an inch. cut my lashing. I'll have to redo that one. All right, our last job is going to be to make a little bridle. Take a little piece of line here. Wrap that around. Okay, we're going to come out to about here. And now what I've noticed is these Qaumutiit have this little, I'm not even sure what you would call it. They got this little loop that goes on the front of the Qaumutiit that that wraps around that bridle, and I guess it controls the front of the runner. So it's like a loose loop. I may not have this detail exactly right, but this is what I saw on a bunch of Qaumutiit. Okay, that seems about right. Trim those off. Go. And that one's done. Pretty cool, I think.
Wait a second.
I had a great time making these. Yeah, so what a fun little project this was. You know, these really took a lot longer than they look like they should, which should be no surprise to me, but that is what it is. But I'm really happy with how they turned out. And you know, if I'd just done one, it wouldn't have taken so long, of course. But because I decided to do, I started doing 3, and then I found one of them was just looking so long, I ended up chopping it down, leaving me with enough material to make this 4th one. So anyhow, so I have more than enough Qaumutiit for my own personal needs. So I'm going to keep one of these for myself. And I think there's one of them here that's a little less perfect than the rest, so I'll keep that one for myself. But the rest of them are going to go out into the world. And so to AM, the person who suggested this video, I'm going to send you a little thank you. A little thank you. You're going to get this guy. And the other 2 are going to go out to Patreon followers. So one of them is going to go to one of my longest standing Patreon followers. And the other one is going to go out to a new Patreon follower. So you've got, we'll say like the next 2 weeks to join me on Patreon at any level, and your name will go into a draw to receive the last Qaumutiit when we get the big one. Okay, so there you go. There's a little bit of incentive to join me, and you know, I hope you'll stick around. Don't just join Patreon, get the Qaumutiit, and then bail. But you know, if that's what you're going to do, well then karma will come and seek you out, my friend. Anyhow, this has been a great project. Thanks very much to Em for suggesting it. And if any of you have suggestions for projects that you'd like to see me tackle, then by all means, let me know. Let me know in the comments. All right, that's it for this one. please join me on Patreon. There's a link in the corner down in the description. Thank all of my Patreon followers who help support these videos. Thank all of you on YouTube who just like and share and all that sort of good stuff. And please remember to subscribe. King king. I keep forgetting to mention that. Anyhow, until next time, keep your stick on the ice. Maybe we should say, until next time, keep your Qaumutiit on the ice.
Goeie